on today's episode of Captain Quality.
Alright, so today in the shop we got this beautiful 535 F10 chassis. It's a 2012 and sure enough it's an all-wheel drive system, and that means we got front axles and we got a tear in the front axle, and it's also making a clicking around turns. So today we're going to show you how to get going and replace this. Alright, so these are the tools you're going to need to complete this job. We're going to start with a big hammer, got a caliper hanger, we have a 10mm socket, 14mm socket, 17mm socket, a 17 Allen, 18 combination wrench, 18 on our 1/2 inch, and an E14 E-Torx, as well as the 1/2 inch torque wrench, and a 21 on the impact. Let's take our 18mm with the 1 inch extension on our 1/2 inch, and we're going to crack these caliper bracket bolts loose. Once we remove these, the caliper is going to drop out of our way, and we're going to move to the next step of setting it to the side. Let's now unhook these brake line grommets. And move these wires out of our way. Take the 10mm ratchet up to this bolt for the ABS sensor and remove it. So now we're going to crack this with the 14. Now we'll hold the other end with the E14. We're going to remove our lower strut bolt with our 18 combination wrench on this end and our 21 impact on the other side. So now we're going to use a chisel to help us spread this knuckle a little bit because it was fighting us. Now we give a few taps as we push up on that upper control arm, and it should release that upper ball joint. So now we're just about ready to remove our axle. So we're going to use our 17mm Allen on the impact to get the axle nut out. To gain access to this axle, to remove it, we're going to remove these 8mm undercover bolts, as well as these two front ones. We don't have access to the axle, so we're going to remove this rearward under tray as well as this metal structural brace. You can use a pick to push this through and release it. For this front support brace, we're going to be using a 13 on the impact. Now we're going to use a pry bar and a hammer to release the axle clip from this front diff. And we're going to be hitting on the back of the axle now that we have access. There it is.
Okay, guys.
So slip the axle shaft gap out through here somehow.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Now it helps if you have a friend hold it down with my boy Tommy. Well, we slip this in here. That's it. Alright, we're good.
You good?
Now we have to insert the front axle back into the front diff as straight as possible to prevent damage of that front diff seal. So as we're getting the axle in here, we could check through this to see if the axle is fully seated, which it is not. So we're gonna keep continuing with this. Yeah. That's it. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our upper ball joint. This one might help. Love tap. And it's in. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our lower strut bolt. Use a screwdriver to align this. Get it into position. See if we can't get this bolt in. Now this bolt's gonna get a little tighter than this upper one. You could tighten it by hand, or the torque spec is 90 Newton meters plus 180 degrees. Reinstall our axle nut. Grab your axle from behind. Hold it in place and get it threaded by hand. We're going to torque this. Now we can go ahead and reinstall this caliper. Now we're going to get the wires for the ABS sensor and the brake wear sensor in the correct orientation and put them into their grommets. We can go ahead now and reinstall our ABS sensor. Supposed to do it a different way. That's one way to do it. So since this car has the M16 axle nut, this gets torqued to 50 Newton meters plus 155 degrees. If you have the other style, which is M27, that gets torqued to 100 Newton meters plus 45 degrees. So let's go ahead and go with our first step of So we are doing both front axles on this car, so we're going to move to the passenger side. We're going to repeat the same process and we'll let you know of any differences. So we did run into some interference on this side due to the axle being longer. It's actually interfering with the strut. So we're going to go ahead and remove some things to get this strut out of our way so we can pull this axle out. If you look over here. That's where we're having an interference issue. And all we did to get to this part was do everything we did on the other side. So now we're going to move up to this sway bar end link and start by removing that. So to remove this end link, we have our 18 combination wrench and a T40 on the impact in the tighten position. Now we're going to undo the connection under this box. You can use a pick to release these clips. Pull this out. Clip right there. That's disconnected. Now we're going to remove these top 3 strut bolts, which are 13 millimeters. Now we can go ahead and remove this strut, and the axle should come right out.
I'll catch you later. Anytime.
Time to put the new one in. So same thing as the other side when installing this. Put it in as straight as possible. Get it engaged into the splines. Yep. Now some impacts. Let's go under here. So you when you're ready.
Oh yeah.
That's it. Let's go ahead and reinstall this strut. Scoot it back a little bit.
How's it going?
What's up?
Swapping part, I guess?
Right, Gav, I got that started.
So we have this axle still somewhat pulled out so we can get everything oriented. Pull down, get that into place. Now we can seat our axle. Now we're going to reinstall everything we removed to get this strut out of our way. And we're going to start with this wire right here. this and its grommet. Now we can move on to the sway bar end link. We're just going to run it down with the impact and then tighten it after. Okay. Go ahead and tighten this. All right, so now we can go ahead and continue with the same process that we did on the other side to finish this job up. All right, so now that we finished both axles, we're going to install our support brace. Check these by hand. One of the last steps, our front undercone. So now that we have both sides completed and the under trays on, a quick checklist to run through is to make sure that we have our top bolts installed and tightened. Our upper ball joint is tied. Our sway bar end link on the side, we remove the strut, which is the passenger side, is tight. Our harness for the strut is plugged in and in its proper home. We have our brake line and sensors all in their correct home and grommets, not twisted or anything. Our ABS sensor installed with the 10mm bolt from the back. Our 2 caliper bolts tight. And our lower strut bolt tight. And our axle bolt tight.